Welcome, everybody. Today I'd like to talk about Jesus's proofs or evidence that the Malkuth, or the sovereignty of God, was coming into reality and would slowly grow as each soul embraced God and approached God in his or her own way. In Mark, Jesus is said as having said, "The season has come. The kingdom of God is at hand. Repent and believe in the gospel." That's what it says, translated from the Greek, which is a little bit distorted from the Aramaic, which we've talked about in our Facebook posts, etc. But without going into deeper explanation, because it's not the point of our discussion today, I'll state what the Aramaic would have sounded like. The age has come, the Malkuth, the sovereignty or rulership of God, is here. Submit lovingly to God and do my proclamation, do my basur, my prophetic message to the world. So Jesus came and he started teaching shortly after he was baptized by John the Baptist. He went for a 40-day purification ritual in the desert, and when he came back, he stated this as he went town to town. And also the apostles stated this as they went town to town. They stayed in one house and let people come to them to receive Jesus's teachings. The Master Jesus, Mar Yeshua. So Jesus wanted to prove that the Malkuth was here, that God was not absent, that God is present in every human heart. And he wanted to show the power of somebody that has purified themselves, made them a Sadiq, a perfected one, part of the Baranash, the new humanity. This corporate Messiah that we've been talking about for some time, both online and here. So the power of a Sadiq is the power over evil. And one thing that we should understand is that there are two images of God in our heart, or two inclinations. In Genesis, there are two yods for the word Yetzer. God made them in his image. The Elohim made them in our image. This image has two Y's, which meant two images or two inclinations. There is the good inclination called the Yetzer HaTov, and there is the negative or evil inclination called the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is the real Satan within us, the real demon that needs to be expelled. Every thought, word, and deed that is negative is a demon. It's an allegorical demon. Every good thought, word, and deed is an angel, allegorically. So we want more angels in our minds and in our hearts than we have demons. And ultimately, if we want to be perfect as our Father in heaven is perfect, then we need to eradicate all of the Yetzer Hara, the negative inclinations, from the Lebab, or the Leb, which is the spiritual heart. Jesus' disciples and other people criticized him and they asked him, what should we eat? Should we fast, etc.? And Mar Yeshua is noted as having said, it doesn't matter so much what goes into your mouth as what comes out of your mouth. Meaning that all the evil of the human heart comes out of the mouth when we express angry things or greedy things or jealous things, etc. So we need to learn to witness our minds and our hearts as we do our worship, as we do our spiritual practices. And immediately when something negative comes to mind, we want to switch to the polar opposite. And even if it's difficult to do, express the positive quality rather than the negative. So coming back to the main topic is the idea that Jesus was demonstrating that the Malkuth of God was here, that Jesus was the firstborn of this Son of Mankind, corporate Messiah. And what he did to prove that God's power was here, that the sovereignty of God was here, was he exorcised the demons and he healed the sick. What Satan means adversary. It's anything that is adversarial to goodness, to purity, to health, to spiritual growth. Anything that is opposed to those is satanic. Not like the horror movies, not like scary shows. Satanic simply means adversarial. It's an enemy. It's something that turns us away from happiness, security, calmness, God, etc. Satanic adversarial influences are anything that turn us away from God. And Jesus cast out so-called demons. That's what the New Testament says. One thing we have to understand is that in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Testament, there is no mention of a Satan. There is no mention of demons. There is mention of other countries' gods being negative or demonic, but there is no necessary demons that were evil in the Old Testament. And the angels weren't necessarily expressed as being good, because as you remember, in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, those angels weren't very nice. They went boom and blew up Sodom and Gomorrah, right? So angel simply meant messenger, but there was never an indication that there was a particular good angel or bad angel, meaning a demon. So the concept of demon, even the idea of shaitan in Job, the tester of Job, God was saying, oh, my disciple Job, he's so pure, he'll never turn away from me. And shaitan was an archangel in Job, and he was the tester of humanity. And he said, I'll make Job crack. And long story short, shaitan, or what became Satan, could not make Job turn away from God. He could not make Job's faith alter. But even then, shaitan was not a demon. He was not the prince of evil. He was an angel of God that tested humanity. He tested to see if we were worth our spiritual mettle. But he wasn't some dark, evil prince that made us sin. It was something quite different. It wasn't until the intertestamental literature and the pseudepigrapha, and that's the material that comes between the Old Testament and the New Testament historically. Right in the middle of the intertestamental period, which had apocryphal works, pseudepigraphic works. I can't speak today, sorry. And there was a lot of information there about demons that all of a sudden popped up. Where did it come from? If the Old Testament didn't talk about demons, how did they just show up? The fact is that when Jews were taken into the Babylonian exile, after Solomon's temple was destroyed, the Babylonian ruler took all of the aristocratic Jews and the religious Jews to Babylon. And there they began to interact and mingle with Babylonian spiritual priests and so on and so forth. And the Babylons had a very elaborate system of angels and demons. And when eventually the Babylonian ruler let the Jews go back and rebuild the second temple, long story short, and when they did that, they came back because the Jews were very much informed by the Babylonian religion. It was an exchange of ideas. And it wasn't, they incorporated a lot of those ideas from the Babylonians into the Judaic religion of the time. That included the ideas of angels and demons. It also included the creation story. Genesis was very late. Even though Genesis is the first book in the Hebrew Testament, it was actually one of the last ones to be written and included in the Jewish canon. So that's where demons came from. In the time of the Christian Testament or the New Testament, they were also dealing with a lot of religions that they were competing with. There's the Mithraic religion, the Roman religions, other religions like the Greek religions that were there, and they were competing. And as you might know, the New Testament was written in Greek, and they were competing with the Greek religion, the Roman religion, the Mithraic religion. There was a whole bunch of stuff going on in Rome at the time of Jesus. So in Greek religious thought, there's something called a daimon. Daimon means little god. And the daimons were not thought to be God, or that there was many gods. It was more that there was an overarching God called the One. And beneath God, it was kind of like his personalized powers or qualities. Much like the Vedas have Kali, Lakshmi, etc. These are all aspects of the One Supreme Consciousness. Likewise, the daimons, or diamonds, if you prefer to call it that way, they were all aspects or powers of the one divinity. Hence, Paul talks about powers and principalities. Paul was Roman. He was a Jewish Roman person, rabbi. But the idea is that once it came to the New Testament time, they started to demonize other people's gods and goddesses. And that's also where the names of more and more demons came from. The early Christians took the names of other people's gods and demonized them. So in original Judaism, there was really no demons. And the Christians kind of stole demons from other people's gods and goddesses just to say, oh, we're pure and they're not. Their gods are demons. My God is great, right? It's like saying your mom's a whore and mine's a saint, right? That's what my spiritual master always jokes about with people that quibble over whose religion is best. She says it's terrible because it's like saying my mom's a saint and your mom's a whore. So we have to be careful of that. But I wanted to point that out. Demons were never around until very late. And when they came about, it was more about demonizing other people's divinities to make their divinities look like the only one or the best one or the holy one or that there's only one, etc. But the Judaic culture was always pluralistic, honestly. It said that in the one version of Genesis, it says Elohim made man. Well, Elohim is plural, it's gods. God with an S, that's right. So where did this one God come from, right? There's one supreme consciousness and it can emanate different powers. Whether you want to call them devas, archangels, whatever you want to call them. There's one supreme consciousness, one emanating powerful God that is both he and she. And from that emanated all these other powers and principalities that run the universe, so to speak. So where does evil come from? Evil comes from the human heart. If we were to all purify our thoughts, words, and deeds, there would be no demons. When it is said that Mary Magdalene had 7 demons cast out from her, it wasn't literal demons with little horns. It was bad thoughts, bad habits. May Yeshua cast 7 demons out of all of us, right? I can't go into this too deeply. Most of you that watch this will probably already know ideas of this. But it is said in pre-Kabbalistic theory, and it developed into Kabbalah, the idea of the 10 Sephirot. These vessels were qualities or names of God, such as Keter, crown, Bina, compassion, Malkuth, sovereignty or kingdom, as some people will translate it. Both are accurate in a sense. Although kingdom, it's not a king domain, it's not a place, it's more like kingship, rulership, sovereignty. That's really what Malkuth means. And in our version of the Master's Prayer that we say during the Liturgy of the Chalice, we say, may thy way be held in every heart. Because the Sephirot, the 10 Sephirot, are the 10 names of God. And each one has a quality: crown, understanding, and chokmah, wisdom. All of these are qualities, and we have to develop those qualities through a spiritual way, the halakha of Mar Yeshua. So may thy way be held in every heart. May thy names be held in every heart. By being hallowed, we digest them, we act on them, we act with wisdom, we act with compassion, we act knowing that God's sovereignty is within us. We act knowing of our spiritual crown. We are all princesses and princes of our one King, Queen, God. In the beginning of time, creation happened whenever the vessels of the Sephirah were shattered, and then those shattered pieces became klipot, which is the essence of evil in the universe. That's how the pre-Kabbalistic people and people in some versions of the Kabbalah will explain why God allows evil to be in the universe. There's a necessary duality. When all these good vessels of God's name were there, in order to create, you need duality. You need both light and darkness, heat and cold, water and dry land for life to exist. So likewise, when those vessels were shattered, the klipot, the shards, became the opposites of compassion, the opposites of wisdom, the opposite of sovereignty, which is slavery to the material world. Slavery to the Yetzer Hara, the negative inclination. So from these shards are said to be Elilim. Elilim are negative aspects of consciousness, which are kind of like or synonymous to how some people might think of beings. So there's the idea of possession and obsession. Some people are very much obsessed with evil things, and some people's body are completely taken over or possessed. I would like to share with you 2 verses about exorcism, one that is not historical and one that is probably historical. Because Jesus exorcised demons or evil forces from people's souls to demonstrate that the power of God is here. It's not Mar Yeshua's body or personality that exorcised the demons. It was God's Malkuth, the co-sovereignty of God that flowed through Mar Yeshua, that allowed him to cast out demons and cast out disease, heal people's bodies. Whether he healed people of a fever or a blood disease, like the woman that touched the hem of his garment, or whether he cast out 7 demons, 7 bad habits from Mary Magdalene to make her the greatest of his apostles, the greatest of his students. It's all a type of healing. Exorcism is a type of spiritual healing. So let's read from the gospel. So in the synoptic gospels are Mark, Matthew, and Luke. They all have a similar view, so they're called synoptic. In Matthew chapter 8, verses 28 through 32, we find a very famous exorcist story. Jesus being the exorcist. When he, the person possessed with demon, when he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and bowed down before him. And he, the demons within the man, shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he had said to him, "Come out of that man, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" The possessed man replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." They begged him earnestly not to send him out of the region. So essentially what happens next is that Jesus took the legion of demons out of the man's body and put them into a herd of swine. And then the swine jumped over the cliff into some water. It continues here. Now there on the hillside, a great herd of swine was feeding, and the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us into the swine, let us enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the swine, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea, where they drowned in the sea. Jesus exorcising demons is certainly true. There's a lot of historical precedent, and Jews were very famous for using Solomonic magic to cast out demons with very elaborate rituals. But Jesus was very different because Jesus cast out only by the power of God flowing through him. He was a channel of such immense power. They only need to say, "What is your name?" And they would have to give the name. And once you have a name of something, you have control over something. So Jesus then transferred them to swine, and the swine ran off the cliff. A lot of people say, "Oh, how cruel, how could Jesus kill the swine?" Jesus didn't kill the swine. If you ever throw a pig in a swimming pool, you're going to see that they swim extremely well. What happened when they say they drowned, they mean the unclean spirits drowned and essentially died. We'll talk more about how that works next week. This is a 2-part series for the rest of the exorcism story. But basically, it's very well known in Jewish Haggadah and Jewish Talmudic references that whenever you want to exorcise a negative spirit from a human body, you should take them out to an area where there's lots of pine trees, if possible, or put the person in salt water, like make them bathe in a sea. Salt water is what helps to cast out demons in Judaic religious thought. So whenever Jesus transferred Legion into the pigs purportedly ran off the cliff into the sea. The pigs started swimming to shore, but the spirits that were plaguing the man, possessing the man, died or moved on to a different reality. And we'll talk more about that next week. So, although exorcism is historical, this famous story is not historical. It's not historical. Why? I have a few notes to share with you. So, Mark's Greek word, legion, is from the Latin legio. There is no Hebrew or Aramaic antecedent. In other words, Jesus never could have said or heard the word legion because there's no such word as legion. However, there were legions of Roman soldiers. So many scholars believe that this non-historical thing that this story isn't true, but Jesus did exorcise. We know this from other sources that are historical. But really what this was a way of the early church making Jesus to be the son of David Messiah. Wanting him to be the one that comes down from the clouds and crushes the Romans, and he becomes the king, and Judaism spreads over the known world. As we know, Jesus satirized the son of David Messiah. He did not believe in it, so he definitely didn't think that he was the son of David Messiah. Not true. Just read Mark. He makes fun of it. If you're making fun of something, then you're saying that's not who I am. But what this exorcism story was trying to do was make Jesus to be the son of David that exorcised the legion, the Roman soldiers, and destroyed them. So there's a lot of spin here and a lot of subliminal messaging here. And unfortunately, those that don't know Aramaic or Hebrew, they wouldn't know that this is a non-historical phrase of Jesus. However, in the Gospel of Thomas, which is very historical in many places, as we've talked about several times in our various talks, the Gospel of Thomas is very old, very authentic in many places, and does preserve Jesus's logia. I would like to read one of those logia with you. because it describes the concept of exorcism. In Logian 21b, Jesus is recorded as having said, "Therefore I say, if the head of the house knows that a thief is coming, he will remain awake until he comes, and will not allow him to tunnel through the walls into his sovereign home to carry away his treasure. You must keep vigil from the very foundations against the world, and gird up your loins with great power, lest those who break into homes find a way to penetrate into you, because they will always discover your weakness." This is about exorcism. I'll read it again and then we'll talk very briefly about it before we move on with the Eucharist. Again, Logian 21b from Gospel of Thomas. Jesus is saying, "Therefore I say, if the head of the house knows that a thief is coming, he will remain awake until he comes, and will not allow him to tunnel through the walls into his sovereign home to carry away his treasure. But you must keep vigil from the very foundations against the world, and gird up your loins with great power, lest those who break into homes find a way to penetrate into you, because they will always discover your weakness." So Jesus here is talking about negative spiritual entities of some sort that he equates to an idea of a thief entering a home. You are the head of the home. Your home is your mind, your body, your heart, your soul. All of these are different levels of home. Of course, our home is our body and our mind, and it's home to our soul, what we really are, our essence. So Jesus is warning us that we always have to keep vigil. We have to keep watchful so that these beings don't bore into the walls. How can they bore into the walls? They bore into the walls of our negative thoughts, our negative words, and our negative deeds. For those that are very, very negative, and we're talking about evil, you shouldn't be scared. If you're doing spiritual practices, there's a powerful aura around you. And when negative entities come nearby, it's like they get electrocuted. I've actually experienced this in real life. It's not book knowledge. It's real life experience that I've had. They can't come near you if you do spiritual practice. So, but if we have weaknesses, negative thoughts, negative words, negative deeds, it gives access to these negative beings to try to take over. Most of us will not become possessed, but many people do become obsessed. Many people become obsessed with sex, with drinking, things that in today's world we find to be very normal. When you become obsessed with something, eating, drinking something, especially things that you normally wouldn't do, there's a possibility you're obsessed by negative forces. No thought or emotion is individual. There are beings all around us that we can't imagine. And there are thoughts floating around. And sometimes thoughts going through our minds are not ours. There are good thoughts emanating from good beings, from the Baranach, from good angels, and there are negative thoughts from negative beings. We'll talk next week about what those negative beings are, but they're not demons like we've been taught in modern Christianity. They're just not. It's different, and we'll describe it next week because otherwise today will get to be too long. Okay. But we want to purify our weaknesses. What are our weaknesses? The weaknesses are the Yetzer Hara. We want to eliminate the Yetzer Hara, which is negative thought, negative words, negative deeds. And we want to encourage. What are we keeping vigil on? What are we watching? What are we awake for? We're awake and being watchful over the good qualities. We're encouraging good qualities, good thoughts, good words, good deeds. This purifies us and perfects us. We have to starve out every negative thought, word, and deed that passes through us. Reject them. And immediately when we see a negativity in our mind or heart, we need to do the opposite. If we have jealousy, immediately give something away. Don't give into it. For those that are extremely evil and give into these weaknesses all the time, they have the possibility of truly being possessed to the greatest extreme or obsessed in a severe way. So we have to be careful of this. This is enough for today. Let's continue with the Liturgy of the Chalice and the Litany of Ascent for my dear sister Terry, who has passed away.